Aloha and welcome to the first of the Library Lab series. And I want to introduce our speaker today. She is our Hawaiian Pacific Resources Librarian, Hau'oli Hiva Moniz. She is Kanaka Iwi and a librarian archivist, a social researcher who received her MLISC from the University of Hawaii at Manoa in 2020 and her second master's degree in Hawaiian Studies with a thesis on Native Hawaiian lateral violence and contemporary Hawaiian language acquisition, also at Manoa in 2023. Hau'oli Hiva provides reference services and library instruction for both the Pu'uloa campus and the Waianae-Moku Education Center. Today, Hau'oli Hiva is providing practical tips and tricks for you to research your family history, discover reliable resources, and gain strategies to organize your findings. Hau'oli Hiva, to you.
Mahalo. Thank you, Junie. Aloha mai kako o wau no o hau'oli hiwa o wau ke kahumala mapuke ho ma ke kula kai ulua o Ewa. Oi ho'i o Leeward Community College ma ka waihona puke no na waihona Hawaii a me ka paki pika. So aloha mai kako. My name is Hau'oli Hiwa. I am the new Hawaiian and Pacific librarian here at Leeward Community College. Thank you so much to Junie Hayashi for the introduction. I'm so excited to be kicking off our inaugural library lab workshops that we are going to be having. We have a wonderful group of librarians here at Leeward Community College who have graciously agreed to give us extra of their time to create a workshop, Library Lab, where different resources will be talked through, different tips and tricks for the search process, and for all the different work that you folks are doing, both here in school and in the community. So mahalo. Hopefully this is one of many wonderful presentations to come. Today, we are looking at Imi Mo'oku Auhau, Hawaiian genealogical research, specifically here in Hawaii. We'll be looking at different resources and repositories that are helpful. We'll be discussing the research process, different tips and tricks, and we'll also be briefly looking at how to get started and how to organize the finds that we come across. I can speak as not only a librarian and an archivist, but also as somebody who went through the Hawaiian Studies program at UH Manoa, which Mo'oku Auhau research was a large portion of that work. And so really talking from my own experience as a librarian, but also as a researcher, kind of some of the realizations and helpful tips that I have gotten across this process for the last few years. And to begin, as the Hawaiian and Pacific librarian, I always like to first talk about Mo'oku Auhau as an idea itself. Mo'o refers to the cyclical generations, both within nature, within our family, within the natural world. Mo'o refers to a lizard, a grandchild, a mo'opuna. Mo'olelo is another word that we get from that root word of mo'o, which again means cycles or to repeat. This is the understanding that we are a piece of a larger continuum. We see this a lot within the metaphor of the mo'o, the Hawaiian lizard. We are able to see their spine or their vertebrae, their backbone, which oftentimes symbolically is used to refer to that cyclical generations, because on the physical body, the only bone that is an exact replica of the bone in front of it is the vertebrae. And so those bones are called mo'o, and those ideas are what really inform the research we're doing. Mo'oku Auhau is important because it tells us about who we are, where we come from, and just how far we can go, because we get to learn along the way. We've probably already been there before. And so again, we'll be looking at just the overview of the process, some of the different repositories, the pros and the cons, where we should focus our search for what types of resources, and we'll also be looking at how to organize everything. Here in Hawaii, we are incredibly lucky because we're from a very culturally proud place. A lot of our people come from families that are interested in genealogy research. A lot of us have some experience or awareness of this work. And so I'm hoping that this resource can serve as an entry point for people who want to learn more, but also as a furthering guide to support those who already are interested and are already doing the work. We'll have a Q&A section at the end of today's conversation where we'll open for questions to hopefully provide more clarity for those different research journeys that people might already be a part of. Okay, so as they always say, okay, kahua mamu, amahope ke kukulu. First the foundation and then the building of the house. So when we talk about doing research, it's always so important that we first talk about the foundations. If you guys are already used to doing genealogy research or archival research, this is just really good refreshing. I always like to say when I'm working with students, when you're going to start genealogy research, it's important to start by taking an inventory of the different tools that you will need. You're going to find a lot of stuff in the different repositories, and part of the Vaivai or the value of those resources is the ability to easily find them and organize them so that they can be used again. And so we're trying to start the process very organized so that we have clarity along the way. I think a lot of us can relate to being in families where they might have done genealogy research. Maybe they have these big binders or these big containers of all these records, but because they're not organized, because they're not easily accessible, they don't become the vital lifelines of culture and family memory that they could be because it's so hard to access. So really being intentional about how we prepare, and think about every single step of the research process. So first and foremost, with taking a stock of the different tools you have, is understanding the different forms that you will be needing across this journey. When I talk about forms, first and foremost is the pedigree charts. Pedigree charts is just a very fancy way of saying family tree. That refers to the most common way of recording generations when doing the genealogy research, where you'll have lists of names and important biographical information all organized and laid out by the generations to be able to see. Pedigree charts come in both printed forms and digital forms. At the end, I'll be showing you the pedigree chart that I suggest for use. I'll also be making available a form fillable version of that PDF pedigree chart for your use. Also, the different forms to be aware of is the archives request forms of the different repositories you're going to. An archive is a little different from a library in the sense that they are not open stacks. You're not able to walk and browse through all of the different collection pieces like you can in a library. Instead, you have a reading room where you're able to request materials, and those materials are brought up from the lower archives or from the internal archives by archival staff, and then are able to be perused and engaged with in that reading room. And so part of that reading room is usually has indexes, and we'll talk about what indexes are. Those are the listing of what records are there and what collections they're in. And then it will have a place for you to fill out an archives request form. And so you'll find what resource you want. You'll find the corresponding number attached to that resource. You'll fill out the form, and that will be used by the staff to find your resources. For some of the places, especially before COVID, but after, some archives have limited hours. So if you're more expert in your research journey and you really want to maximize your time in these repositories, I always suggest see if you can take multiple archives request forms home with you and use the indexes that are online, that are digitized, to do your research, to locate your records before you go to the physical space. Have those archive request forms already filled out. And so then when you're there, you can just give them request form after request form. Usually they have a limit on how many records you can look at one time. But that way you're using your time to spend time in the records themselves instead of trying to search for them. So that might be a helpful tip. Figure out what types of forms forms are required and see if you can get multiple forms of those so that when you are back at that place, you're able to research quickly. And then next is being aware of what is in your own family's archives. Start looking through your family's genealogies charts. Try to start understanding how this information is recorded already within your family to start identifying different pukas or holes in the information or different starting points. So really keeping in mind when we're talking about the tools, what are all the physical forms that I need and what are all the status of them. Next is recording devices. Again, with the ability to easily access information after you initially find these records, being aware of voice, video, scanners, copiers, and printers. What does that mean? That if you're going to be recording your notes to do it in a way that you know where everything is, but then also, if you're going to try and record information when you're at a repository, being aware of what type of recording devices they offer. What do I mean by that? Some places you can only use the copier and the copier only takes quarters, but you do have to pay. Some places you can do scanners, but you have to pay for that as well, but maybe it's only credit cards. Some places don't do scanning, but do printing, but don't do copying. So you really want to be aware because there's nothing worse than finally finding the record that you needed and going to try and print, trying to scan it or send it somewhere, and you find out that the archive does not have that option. And so really being aware from the beginning of how exactly are you going to go about recording this different information and taking care of that recording is really important. And then also making sure you have a safe space to keep all your records. The rule is have it in more than one place. Have it physical and have it digital and have multiple copies. You never want to be the person that loses your ancestral inheritance because someone steals your laptop. That happens a lot more frequently than you realize. And so, again, with starting the research, really understanding what the family's archives that you already come from is talking to your family, really putting the feelers out there. You'd be very surprised who steps forward, even people you know or don't know, when you start making it known that you're interested in doing genealogy work within your family, who will come and step in to help you. And if anyone has questions on how do we encourage family sharing and some difficult family dynamics, we can definitely talk about that at the end too, because that is something that comes up a lot in the different classes I teach. And then once we start to understand what your family already has, what the holes or the interest points that you want to dive deeper is to examine the dates and the timelines. One of the things I talk a lot about in this research is keeping everything in context. A lot of times families, especially the further back you get into families, sometimes you're looking at the same family name across multiple generations in the same family, and it can get very confusing exactly what Charles Lee you're looking at if there's been about five of them. So being very aware of the birth dates and the death dates of the people we're dealing with. If you find an article from 1912 talking about how Charles just became a firefighter, but Charles was born in, I don't know, 1908, it's probably not the right Charles. Things like that. When we find different newspapers, sometimes it'll only have that person's last name on there. And if it's a unique enough last name, maybe you know it's your family. But by looking at the date of the newspaper and the content of the article, then you're able to better keep in context, well, this could be the person we're talking about because they would be about the right age. Sometimes we've even had students who, when they were doing their research, found people who were kind of in the right time period, saying names, but wasn't quite right. And they actually found out that they had a great grandparent that passed away very young. And so somebody else ended up, another sibling got that person's name, or not a grandparent, a great aunt who had what would become their grandparents' name, but it was a different person, even though it was in the same family. So being aware of keeping everything in context, timeline wise, because you can get very excited very fast in the process, and that can make things a little easier. And then to check for alternative names and spellings. It's really important as we're researching to be aware that typos happens, that human error is a thing. I really suggest that when you're searching, never search for a whole name first if you can't find that person, or don't just stop there. Sometimes people were only able to spell the first name right, but not the last name. So try and look up the first name and then pieces of the last name. Maybe they could spell the beginning of the last name correctly, but they messed it up in the last couple of words. But play around with those things. Don't trust the text to typing AI. Some of these original records are, many of these original records are written in hand, and then they use an AI software tool to kind of pull what it is in text, and maybe an A looked like an O, and they recorded it incorrectly. So don't give up. Try and search different versions of that person's name. Try to search different sections of that name. So if you can't, again, find the first and last name, maybe just try and search a portion of the last name, maybe just the beginning few letters, and see what pops up. And just don't give up, even if that person you're looking for doesn't come up immediately. Records can have typos too. Okay. And so when we're talking about the different repositories, I always like to start with general resources. General resources are often, when we're talking about genealogy, they're often open source materials. What does that mean? Open source means that it's a repository or a database of things that anyone can upload to. And that is most commonly seen within Ancestry.com and FamilySearch.org. This is where people can make accounts and say, you know, this is the information of my great grandfather, and they can upload it to the tree, and then you guys can see it, and more people can find more information. It's a wonderful resource because many times people can have incredible treasure troves in their own families that aren't recorded elsewhere that they have the liberty to upload for engagement. The other side of that, though, is that anyone can upload anything. And you always have to be kind of aware. But I do like to start with our general resources because I do find that students find a lot of things, and it's really exciting if they are new to the research process. Many of us know about Ancestry.com because of the DNA tests that they are doing on everybody. Ancestry.com is a wonderful online resource. We are very lucky, actually. Here at Leeward Community College, we have a paid Ancestry account. So this is me within the Leeward Community College Library website. I've gone to the A through C's database list. It's right here under the research tab. I've gone to A, and under A, I see Ancestry. And this gives us a paid account entry version of Ancestry.com. Usually you have to pay for it. There's different paid levels, and you're able to traverse Ancestry to pull different records. And so you can access it by being on campus or being logged into the Leeward Library website, and you're able to search there. And you'll be able to see a kind of emoticon in the top right corner that says Leeward Community College, so that you know that you're in this as a paid member through our institution account. However, though, what I did want to focus on is between the two general resources is something called FamilySearch.com, .org. A lot of people are very aware of Ancestry because they have a very huge marketing campaign, but my favorite is actually FamilySearch.org. FamilySearch.org is the largest online database of genealogy research, period, in the entire world. It's also completely free with no paywalls. It is a piece of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Mormon Church, who have created this incredible repository online with families, different databases, different government record collections, all again free and accessible. So this is the Family Search website. We're going to make this PowerPoint available to you folks. Everything is hyperlinked. And on the Family Search website, it gives us a bunch of different options. I've made an account for me. You're able to come in here and to search. You're able to make a family tree. You're able to see different records attached to the person. This is my, I believe, great, 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 great grandmother. My records on here go into like the 1500s. If you are a Hawaii family, even if you're not Mormon, your family's probably on here. This was one of the church's imperatives to get not just Mormon members up online. And so a lot of our family, a huge portion of our family is reflected here. And we're able to see all different types of information. They have something called details, which we are just looking at, which is that person's general bibliographic information, but they also have something called sources. This is all records that were created by a government entity organized in one place. So this is about like marriages, births, deaths, census records. If they're in the military, it'll be included here. And they also have this other piece that I wanted to call out, which are memories. And this is people's ability to upload primary records such as photographs and newspaper articles. And so this talks about my kupuna's obituary, her life here, and we even have a photo of her, though she was born in 1831. And they have this view tree, so you're able to see all of her ohana, and it also gives you the option to view your relationship. So you're able to come in here, you can put in your own information or not, or you can simply use the home button to search first names, last names, possible locations, and an estimated birth year. It is absolutely an incredible resource. Both of these collections have other collections that they've purchased, other government document collections that are available. And so one of them, like Family Search, it's all the births and christenings from the mid 1800s to early 1900s, marriages, deaths, and burials. And Ancestry 2 also has like a very big census record collection as well. So if you're starting off, it's a wonderful place to begin. And then next, we're going to be looking at some of the repositories that are government repositories, meaning that they are attached to a government entity in some way that usually creates government records that then become the backbone of the collection, the archive itself. And so, of course, the number one that we all think of is Hawaii State Archives. There's a photo of it on the screen. Hawaii State Archives is located on the same grounds as Iolani Palace, and it has the wonderful vital statistic collections. This is where all of the births, the marriages, the deaths, the ship passenger manifests, the stuff about land, the maps, the newspaper articles are located. However, a lot of these records are from the 1800s to maybe the very, very, very early 1900s, but it pretty much stops there. A lot of these records were created during the Kingdom period, and so it has things about different governments going on, and of course the population of people being born, dying, marrying, and coming to and from. And so one of them again that talk about that, one of the collections is the ship passenger manifests. If you are like me, who are Hawaiian, but all the other ethnic groups that came here, ship passenger manifests are an incredible collection or resource at the Hawaii State Archives. This is a list of all those who were aboard different ships when they were coming or leaving Hawaii. It'll say where in the world those people were from. The manifest is just a listing of everyone who's on board and what is on board. So if they're carrying some type of crop, it'll mention it, some type of goods, but it'll include, if your ancestor is listed on that manifest, what their name was, what their age was, what their gender was, where they docked on. So, I have one of my great 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 grandfathers from Japan. It says where he was in Japan. He came here at the age of 23. It shows that his original name was Kisaburo Hayashi, but they list the name George in quotes on the manifest itself as well. So he was going by the name George. And then when we find him in the records here in Hawaii, it shows that his middle initial, his name, Kisaburo, has become that middle initial of K, and you just see George Hayashi. But we're able to line up the name, we're able to line up the age so that we know we're talking about the same person. So Ship Passenger Manifest is fascinating. It'll tell you what they're from, what they were doing. You can kind of imagine what your ancestor was up to, as maybe a 19-year-old coming from the Philippines and ending up in Hawaii. So wonderful different resources there. There's also different naturalization records, so citizenship records and whatnot. When we're talking about vital statistics or vital records for a person, usually that refers to birth, marriage, and death. And birth, marriage, and death are the three most well recorded pieces of information about a person's life there is. Why? Because the government is involved. All of these different characteristics that the government tracks, we usually have a lot of records for it. And so that will be a big bulk of the research that you're doing, really trying to find that vital statistic, that vital information that then can be used to search these other repositories to get some of the more colorful information about a person. But that's the vital statistic collection. as vital, statistics collections. So the Hawaii State Archives has incredible resources, but is a time period from about the 1800s to maybe the 1900s, maybe the 1920s or 30s. And you can find the information for a person there. If you want to find somebody who was born in the early 1900s to about the 60s or so, and you want to get maybe a birth certificate or a death certificate, that would be at the Hawaii State Library. And I'm going to pause here. The reason why you want the vital statistics records such as births and deaths and marriages as well, that is because at least in Hawaii, we not only ask like if somebody's getting married, what their name and their partner's name is, who's they're going to be betrothed to. We also record both of the parents' names for both of those individuals. We record what ethnicity and where in the world the parents are from. We ask about their marriage status, if they've ever been divorced before, how old were they? Is this the first marriage? We also have asked where they're recorded, where they were getting married, and who was the witness. And so you're able to find a huge amount of information. Let's say if you couldn't find your great grandmother's information, all you could find was your grandmother's, but you want to know your grandmother's mother's name, you could find her marriage certificate, your grandmother's marriage certificate, and that would tell you your great grandmother's name. It would be listed there. And it would also tell you her ethnicity, where she's from, where she lives. It might even have her signature on there. So they're incredible resources that breathe into more spaces and places to do those things. So in listing those things, the Hawaii State Archives does that 1800s to about the early 1900s. If you want to look at somebody who existed around the early 1900s to around the 60s or so, you're going to look at the Hawaii State Library. Basically, there was too many vital statistics created. The archives couldn't hold it all. And so a lot of that information went into the Hawaii State Library, the main one, the main branch in Honolulu, because they had some of the records from the Department of Health. And so those records are there. And if you want to have information, again, birth, death, or marriage about somebody who's born around the 60s, all the way to present, that is stored somewhere else. And we'll be looking at that in the next slide. But I want you to just to keep in mind, Hawaii State Archives is going to be 1800s to early 1900s. Hawaii State Library is going to be 1900s to about 1950 or 60. And everything past that is going to be at the Department of Health. And we'll be looking at that in a bit. And so I know keeping in mind what repositories have what will save you a lot of time and grief, because it'll make sure you're barking up the right tree from the very beginning. And I just want to touch on this question of what is an index. When we're talking about an index, when we're talking about a finding aid, an index is just a list of an archive's contents that helps a user find the information. So an index might be of Oahu marriages from the 1900s. Maybe that's an index. I'm just making it up. But what I'll find on that is a list of every single person's name or every single person's marriage from that time period on that island, a listing of who the two people were, the date, and then the specific record number of that license, marriage license or whatnot. And again, that archives form we were talking about, I would use the index, I would find my family's name. Okay, I know that they're on Oahu, they got married during that time period. I find the name, I find the record number, and that's what goes onto my archives request form that's submitted at the reading room for retrieval. Okay. And then finally, not finally, but here towards the bottom of the screen, we see the Hawaii Department of Public Health. This is all of the vital statistics for people from about like the 60s on. Basically, the reason why this is not all in the the Hawaii Public Library is because if people were going to ask for somebody's birth certificate or death certificate and somebody just died in the 2000s, if you're going to ask for somebody in the Department of Public Health, through the Department of Public Health, you do have to give your own information about who is requesting that information. And the hope is that if you're requesting somebody who died in 2000 because you're trying to steal their identity, they will be able to have a record of who requested that information. And so things that people who are alive now or have passed much more recently are going to be in a separate section, public health, and it's linked, the catalog of the database is linked on here to start searching. it's going to have it all in that place, but it's also going to have the added requirement of putting your own information in about who is doing the requesting. So just keep that in mind. And then we also have an incredible resource through Ulukal, the Hawaiian Electronic Library. The Hawaiian Electronic Library, Ulukal, was created by UH Hilo. It is the world's largest digitized community Hawaiian library. Everything is vetted, free, searchable, and downloadable. And within Ulukal, they have a lot of listing of indexes, marriage records, divorce records, wills, probate records, naturalization records, denization records, passport records. That's another wonderful resource for doing genealogy, because you would be able to um, search their different databases and see what's on there from the comfort of your own home. So this is me on Ulukau. If you've ever used Ulukau before, just know that the page will always open in Hawaiian. So you have to click the English button to translate the page. But don't worry about it. It does do both. And even just on the front page, before I research anything, I'm able, by scrolling down, to see the Hawaiian genealogy indexes. And right here, it opens to a whole database, a listing of indexes, and how to use that index to do your own genealogy from here. And so this is a place you can go to start browsing online some of those indexes. And so it's important to know it's not a thorough listing. The Hawaii State Archives will have much more than this, but it's a good place to start if you're trying to get an idea of things just online. Maybe you're not physically able to go in somewhere. And so I'm able to, let's say if I go on Ulukau, and I search of the word Durant, that's a family last name. It looks like there's two in the Hawaiian genealogy collection. And this is my no, maybe not that great, like three greats, grandparents, family stuff. And I'm able to see that there is not only the record in here, this is what the index looks like. This is an index. Again, it'll have the two people's names. And when you see the word K next to the name, especially because this is really back in the day, it's old, K stands for Kane. That means it's a male. That person's a male. If you see a W next to a name, that means it's a woman. They will not be using F's and M's. It'll say the date they got married, the district, and then the page and book and page number. And this book and page number is the record number that you would be listing on that request form to receive it. And at least for marriage, I can say off the top of my head, you'll actually see the first letter of the island. So all the Oahus will be O dash something. And so I can see from here, my kupuna is listed in here. And let's see if I can pull up the actual thing. The ones listed on Ulukau not just have a list of the index, but for many of them, they actually have the populated record linked and PDF'd in there. Okay, so this is what a marriage license looks like. And just glancing at this, I can tell some information. So this is my great-great-great-grandfather, who was not the father of my great-great-great-grandfather, but married my grandmother and then took responsibility for my, so I'm unfortunately not Filipino. I love the food and I love the music and the people. But if this person was my ancestor, just looking at this record, it's incredible, right? Because I get to see what his father's name was. I get to see what his mother's name was. I get to see not only their ethnic group, but where they're from. So a lot of time when it's talking about residents, it even if they're here in Hawaii, it'll say their nationality. So what their birth nation was. We can see the name of the female. We can see here that neither of them had been married previously, because if it said maybe my kupuna's name here and it said a widower, then I know, oh my gosh, grandpa had two wives. This is the second one, right? So if you going, who's this one lady? And it's all these weird names, but that's my papa. Well, now just looking at this, I go, okay, so there isn't another wife floating around, but maybe I see that and I go, okay, there is a second wife. So I just know that. And by dates, you'd be able to tell what that order of marriage would be. But I can see my kupuna's name here. She was 23 when she got married. She was a maid, so she had never been married before. I see that it says nationality is Puerto Rican. Woo! So I guess I'm Puerto Rican. We see the name of the father, it just says M. Quinton. We see the name of the mother, Anita. So she's a junior. My great-great-grandmother is named after her mother. That's beautiful. I can't make this out. I don't know. But you got to become friends with somebody who can read cursive well. And then we see that her race is Puerto Rican as well. and it shows also the residency, and this might be the island or something. I don't know. Where I'm a librarian, I found the record. We got to find someone else to read the record. But this is an incredible piece of information that just looking at this, I'm able to find four other people, my great grandfather's mother and father, my great grandmother's mother and father, and I know where they are from. I know what race they are. I know what their names are, and I'm able to continue my search and go up a generation and continue. So absolutely excellent. So this is within that Ulu Kau piece. And then we also have, again, that public health information. I just wanted to also pause here. This is what a microfilm machine is. Sometimes it's referred to as microfiche. This is a photo of it at Hawaii State Archives. I always like to include this in my lectures so that students are not intimidated, not even students, people in general, and they know what this machine is. It's just a way of compacting a bunch of information on very, very small, like tape. It looks like the old like camera negatives, and they condense it, and you'll go up, you'll request the record, it'll say microfilm, you'll get it, it'll be like in a little carton. And if you don't know what to do, just ask and they'll load it for you. There's two little nozzles and you can go back and forth, but just know that that's what it is. Know that you're allowed to ask for help on how to use it, and you don't need to know how to use it either. I've talked to some students, they'll get all the way there and then they'll realize it's a microfilm and somebody gave them the microfilm tape and they're too embarrassed to ask, and they just went home. And so really just knowing that this is what the machine is, that's kind of how it works. Know and feel empowered to ask for help. You don't need to know how to do it. So once you start to get these family members' names, once you're able to kind of start identifying them on government records, right? We're able to ask that next question of, okay, well, I see that they lived. Where in the world did they live? And us in Hawaii, us as Hawaiians, right? We want to know, what aina am I connected to? And so a lot of times that next step will be the land research. So once we get the kupuna's name, once we get what time period, once we get where in the world they might live, which you can find on things like the birth certificate or the marriage certificate. Maybe they're both from the Philippines, but they're getting married in Kona. So now we know, where in the world. Then we're able to go through some of these databases to further refine or further deepen our relationship with those places. Awakonahihi is one of them. Awakonahihi was created by Dr. Lily Kalakame'elehiva. She is a senior researcher and professor at University of Hawaii at Manoa. She's the kumu that I trained in my genealogy research with. And she created this online repository called Awakonahihi. This has a bunch of different historical maps of different areas in Hawaii. They have a bunch of different videos that you can watch to learn about traditional Hawaiian land division systems, also about how to do this research, about learning about the maps and whatnot. That is extremely helpful. And so you're able to come into here and look at different parts of Hawaii and to start understanding Aina better. Once you get further your research and you want to take that even one step further of looking through Mahele research, which is a whole nother topic, that's another library lab. This is a really good resource to help you do that. Okay. And so Awakonahihi will give you maps and it will give you different record numbers to look even deeper into those maps via Mahele document if you're interested. We have Kipuka Database, which is a online GIS map of the different islands in which you're able to look for land areas either by search by their names or by clicking the map itself, and the map is populated with different geographical or cultural or historical information of the different places you're perusing. So if you know that your kupuna is from Honomu, you don't know nothing about it, you're able to go on Kipuka, look up Honomu, and start engaging to see what the Aina looks like, start looking at the maps, and start looking at the historical significance of that place. And then finally, the historic maps of Hawaii and the Pacific through Hamilton Library at University of Hawaii at Manoa. This is the largest online database or I should say collection of maps, Hawaii historic maps in Hawaii. And it really is the sky's the limit. I really encourage you to engage in that collection. When we think of maps, a lot of times we think of topographical maps, maybe the elevation, and it's like, well, I don't really want to see how big the mountain is. I don't really care. It's not. When I was taking the map class and I was researching with them, I remember seeing a map from 1922 of all the sexually transmitted diseases in Chinatown and the ethnicity of each of the patients who had that STD. And bear with me, what I'm saying is people have used maps as a medium to record all kinds of different information. And so when we are looking at the different types of records, the different types of repositories, is even if those records or repositories say that they are for one thing, or we have a certain idea, well, maps, that means it would be this kind of information. I don't think I need that kind of information. Don't stop there and definitely engage, because it is a wealth of information you wouldn't expect, and also being very creative in the research process. The research process is almost like an art of trying things, and even if it doesn't seem like maybe it'll get there, just trying it, and you might just find what you're looking for in a very unexpected place. And a little blurb, the Great Mahele was not great. That's another lecture. And so we've talked about the different places where we can start getting the vital statistic records, births, deaths, marriages. We've talked about how we can use, oh, Kalamai, and I was halfway through the Papa Kilo thing. I don't think I finished it. We did talk about Uluko, the online databases to access those government records, those births, those marriages, and deaths. I did just quickly want to pause and touch on this is Papa Kilo, the fact that you can use both Ulukau and Papa Kilo to also engage in a hefty newspaper collection. So if you want to see a lot of community events have been recorded in Hawaii, a lot of photographs, a lot of different, yeah, community created publishings. And both of those you can use to browse the collection. So just looking here, somebody created a newspaper article, a magazine article about my grandmother. So she's in here. This is from 1986. I wasn't alive. Um, I mean, I don't know. That's a fun factoid. That's cool. And this shows a ceremony, a Hawaiian ceremony my grandmother participated in. So Kamehameha the Great is remembered. And so it looks like 1986, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So about 39 years ago, I can see what my grandmother was participating in. I can see that she's part of Mamakakawa. I can see that she is the district resource teacher for Hawaiian Studies for the DOE. I can hear about what she said. E oni vale no o ko I ku pono aole po. This is the last words that Kamehameha spoke. And so just by using this online database, I'm able to not just find those vital statistics, I'm also able to start engaging in the more colorful memories about their lives, things like newspaper articles, looking at magazines, seeing for photos, seeing what community stuff they were engaged in. And we're able to do that and so much more within those repositories. But I have spent a lot of time talking about vital statistics, again, just because that is usually the most accurately and most commonly recorded bibliographic information for a person that there is. Okay. So we've kind of started to engage in how to find those vital statistics, how to find those everyday, more colorful records describing our kupuna's lives. Now we're going to be looking at that final side, which is cemetery records. Cemetery records actually give us a lot of information. It tells us who the person's partner is. It tells us sometimes who the family is, like who the children are. In some of the really old graves, multiple members of a family would be buried in one place. Maybe it doesn't tell you how they're all connected, but you do know more names and you do know that there is a connection. Sometimes it tells you the person's religion. Sometimes it tells you their military record or status. And that's important because military and religious organizations have oftentimes their own repositories, their own archives to engage with. Again, with like the family listing of names all on one stone and not knowing how they're necessarily related, but you do have names. That's helpful when you're looking through census documents. Census documents record people based off what household that they're in. So it's a listing of names. Sometimes it says how they're related to each other. But you're able to see that if there's a Mark and a Joseph and a Mary, all on a gravestone, and now you're seeing the census record, and it's a Mark and it's a Mary and a Joseph. I hope that's the same names. Then we kind of know that, yeah, it's probably the same people. Seeing that provides clarity. So one of them is the Hawaii Cemetery Index on Oahu. This is keeps the names of 48 Oahu cemeteries. But really, what I would be suggesting is the use of Find a Grave. Find a Grave is the largest online repositories of headstones in the world. It's also extremely helpful because oftentimes it will also include a photo of a headstone. So you're able to see, is there any inscriptions? Is there anything about religion or military status? It'll also tell you information about that person's life as pulled by that stone, that headstone, and where they're buried. So after you learn about your great great grandmother and you learn that you guys were both born in October and you find a newspaper article that said she was really into training dogs and you like your dog too and you want to go and see where she is to say, hey, grandma, thank you. And I really enjoy my life. You're able to do that through Find a Grave. So really, not just for the research process, but then also those next steps. And then I always want to include, as a Hawaiian person, and of course, saying that there is Hawaiian and non-Hawaiian people, but I always want to be respectful to the history, is also the Kalaupapa leprosy settlement, where it has a listing of the patients and graves at Kalaupapa. I've had it twice now that people couldn't find ancestors, but found them at Kalaupapa. Kalaupapa leprosy is Hansen's disease that was introduced into Hawaii, that took a lot of lives. It also had a government practice of taking people and putting them at Kalaupapa, and a lot of times people's records stop everywhere, but you can find them maybe sometimes at Kalaupapa. That was a huge portion of the population here in Hawaii. My great grandmother is born and raised at Kalaupapa because her parents were patients, and that's something we only found out quite recently through our own genealogy research. So yeah, and then all of that information can be further encouraged through the use of different online newspaper databases that are listed here. Okay, and never forget, as a Hawaiian person, when I'm teaching this class at the different Hawaiian groups or for Hawaiian studies, ask your kupuna for help. It makes a difference. When you're in the practice of research, ask your kupuna for guidance. Tell them what you need help with. Say, if you want me to find you, you got to do your side of the deal. Help me. And you would be surprised. Family loyalty never stops, not even at the grave. This is the generation pedigree chart we were speaking about that I would suggest for use. My favorite thing about this pedigree chart is in the top left-hand corner, you have chart numbers. And what you can see is, I don't know if you can see my mouse, you would be listing your name as number one. Underneath there is your spouse, and your children is below that. But for two and three are your two parents. Sometimes people start putting their spouse's family on three going back. But you choose your mother and your father and you start building out your information from there. You go back and back and back. The reason why I love this and the reason why this is my favorite pedigree chart is, let's say once you get through, finish with this chart, and usually commonly you don't finish the whole chart. Maybe you finish one generation, I mean one line going for all the way back, and at least you want to keep going with that line because you have stuff, but you've run out of space. You're able to take this paper, you can make multiple copies. So you take another blank version of the same exact paper. Let's say you get all the way up to 16, and that kupuna, you want to keep going. You want to write about her parents. 16 is in this top right corner. And then you're able to take that new paper, you write your kupuna's name in that slot one spot. But on that chart number next to it, that little square, you write 16. And then on the top of the chart, you go chart number two, and you put number one on this chart is the name as number 16 on chart one. So this way, it's the exact same document, the exact same chart, but because it has this fillable ability and the ability to keep a chart tracking number on the top corner, you're able to just keep updating or editing the piece of paper, the form to say who that person is in correspondence with that first page and keep building. Okay. And so beginning your research, I would suggest with find out what you know, print out one of these generational pedigree charts, fill it in, see what you know off the top of your head. One of my teachers used to say, if you have to look the information up, you don't know it. So if you have to look at your family records, you don't know it. And so really kind of understanding what your own understanding is. Then identify what the missing pieces are and select what kupuna you are interested in. Who do you want to start with? And then look at that kupuna's life, specifically that vital statistic information. If they're born in the really early 1800s, we know where we're going to look first. The Hawaii State Archives. We know if Somebody who was born in the 80s, we're probably not going to be looking in the Hawaii State Archives because it's completely the wrong time period. But you're going to identify, okay, what type of records do I not have? What do I need? And what repository would be the best place to do those things? And getting that information, getting that kupuna, you can start that process. And then you're able to also see what's online for those repositories once you've selected that place, and you can use their online indexes to start looking through the records, have the records you want already listed so that when you're showing up in person at the repository itself, you can use that time to look through the records instead of just searching for it. And then finally, I wanted to just quickly end with this. This is an overview on how I would suggest doing a genealogy binder, right? Because I think a lot of us have some kind of genealogy information already, but the issue is, again, with the organization of it. And so what I was trained by Dr. Lily Kalakame'elehiva, she had us create genealogy binders, okay? And I'm gonna use my hands, but imagine with me, we have the genealogy binder itself, okay? It's the 3-ring hole binder. At the beginning of that binder, we have all, and this chart is going up and down. Okay, so we have an extended list of all the pedigree charts. That's all your family, as far back as you can go, everybody, maybe it's like 20 pages of that original pedigree chart we were looking at, and you've just filled it all out. Okay, and then you put a binder divider, right? You put a divider. Now, let's say if I want to specifically, out of all those family lines, I am really interested in, and I found some stuff for the Moniz family, right? My dad is a Moniz for the Moniz family. So I put the binder separator, divider, and then and yes, it's repetitive, but bear with me. Then I print out more of these pedigree charts and I fill in only the Moniz line, right? And so I have all my Moniz, I'm not filling out this chart with everybody else, all these other family lines. I'm just highlighting the Moniz. Once I'm done creating the pedigree chart for that specific family line, I will start by talking about that first family member or kupuna that I found a record for. Let's say I found a record for my father's father. So I get onto Word, and trust me, it's a lot easier than it sounds. And maybe I type up some information. My father's name was Albert Moniz. This is his vital statistic. He was born this year. He passed away this year. Maybe I put a blurb. This is what he did. He liked animals. He was married. He was a nice man. You label it with the pedigree chart number. So you would say on chart 1, right? Because within this Moniz section, I have just the Moniz listed on a pedigree chart. So I'll say on chart 1, um, he is number 14. I don't know what number it is. So I'll have, again, his name, his date of birth, his date of death, his background blurb, and his pedigree chart number. And behind him is where I will have either like one of those folder slips to slip paper in, or maybe I punch holes in the record directly and throw it in there. But that's where I would throw in all the records about him that I found through this research process. I found his marriage certificate. Okay. I found his military discharge papers. I found a newspaper article talking about how he was very good at bowling. All of those things I put in a little folder, or I hole punch it and I put it behind his specific family member blurb information, and that's behind him. Okay, so we have our pedigree chart from that specific family line. We have the first ancestor I'm talking about and his corresponding number. And then I have all the records about him behind him. And then let's say I want to talk about his mother. So I'm going to make another page. This is the kupuna. This is the chart number. This is the blurb. And this is all the stuff I found about her behind her. What you're going to be doing is by the time you're powered with this, right? Because genealogy, when you're sitting down, yes, people want to look at everything, of course, but it's usually because your one cousin's brother's cousin's friend or whatever wants to see a specific line, usually, right? It's like, well, I'm a Moniz. No, I don't want to look at the Durants. I'm sure they're wonderful people. Let's see our own stuff. And so what you have done is created the master list at the beginning with everyone on there so you can see the whole picture. But you've also streamlined it so every single family is organized by itself. So if you just want to look at the Monizes, they're all there. And then every single record attached to an individual is already tagged with that individual, and that individual is located on that specific pedigree family chart in the beginning. So let's say if you open up again to just the Monizes on the pedigree chart, you're able to see, okay, my papa's information is here. And so, okay, and I'll open it up and I see all the information that I have about him. And on that pedigree chart of that specific family line, you can also annotate that, like see page whatever, that's like what grandfather's military records on there, and so maybe on his specific family member page I've created, maybe I put a page number. I don't know. That's a lot of steps. But again, by the end of this, you will have everything organized, everything by family, everything attached to the person that they're from, everything in the big picture of all of these lines, but also specific. And if you have multiple kids, make multiple binders while you go so that when, we are no longer here, nobody is beefing over getting their own binder and you make them make all their own copies. And finally, what I will say is, as you're doing this journey, you have to remember you're never alone. Google can find you 1,000 answers. A librarian can find you the right one. So if you want the right answer, give me an email or drop a line to one of my colleagues. We're more than happy to help you with the process. I hope this was helpful. I hope it gave you some ideas and hopefully inspired some different tips and tricks within the process as well. Thank you very, very much. Mahalo. Thank you.
I am going to stop the recording.